Okay, with Russell Babcock, he's got two screenplays that we're talking about: the Holmes Enigma, and then he's got the Memory Tax, both sci-fi fantasy films. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Um, we can talk about the memory tax first. The other one is actually more of a crime thriller, but certainly the memory tax itself is a sci-fi pilot,
Yeah.
sci-fi drama primarily. It's about this young girl, Adley Gord, who's 14, who because of a tragic accident has been given this implant that has allows her to keep her long-term memories, but it also grants her the ability to access the World Wide Web, for lack of a better word. And basically, what the problem is that it comes with a tax, so to speak. It basically every time she downloads and utilizes information, it she risks losing her own personal memories. So that's kind of the, the the dynamic there. And of course, there's also the underlying story that the implant was basically stolen by her parents, so as to give her that ability. And now you have the corporate entity itself
Yeah.
wanting it back for obvious reasons, and quite frankly, the owner of the company has a personal interest in getting it back because he is suffering from Alzheimer's himself and wishes to be able to use that implant, hopefully to save his own memories.
So she has all the world's knowledge in her brain, I guess, right?
Yes, that's it. And again, that's and of course, but it comes with a huge catch, and
Sure.
that's the challenge.
Well, even if there's no catch to it, that would be mind-boggling. Like, pardon the pun, to the brain, I guess, right? To have that.
Well,
Yeah.
it is, and like I say, I mean, it's in this day and age, with all the technology that's readily available, that's kind of what prompted me to think about this story. Is because what is the ultimate price that we pay by having all this potentially this information readily available to ourselves, and we lose certain things as a result. I mean, we lose our innocence, especially the young people, and they sometimes find themselves growing up because of the introduction of information. But of course, in the context of my story, I'm using it from a different. I'm going from a slightly different perspective, so as to
Yeah.
show a different type of tax, so to speak, with regards to the use of technology.
Yeah, I think the issue now is that there's phony information, right? And then
Yep.
and then or like basically you get kind of redundant with your information, meaning that like the algorithms just kind of put you in the direction of the same information over and over again. There's no like, and then as humans we get kind of comfortable and then we just kind of stay in that comfort zone of information. That's my perspective, what I see.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I mean, as you know, as we all know, I mean, that's one of the reasons. One of the things I'm touching upon with this series is the fact that, um, I mean, from my own personal experience, and I'm sure most people, over time, you start losing recollection of certain memories, certain
Yeah.
events, or certainly you lose the ability to have the emotional component of it. And that's again kind of what I've been trying to do with the series is try this pilot is to try to um, show, at least in this context, the price is being paid, i.e., losing memories. But that's, I think, at some level, maybe not in the context of a young girl, but as adults, I mean, I think we all understand that as we grow older and we gather more information and become, you know, more knowledgeable about stuff, we do lose certain things from our past, maybe the details that at one time we quite cherished.
Yeah. Well, or things all kind of amalgamate into one kind of mush of memory, I guess, right?
That is correct. That is
Like
correct.
four Christmases become one Christmas, right? In the memory bank.
That is true. I mean, we lose the detail. We lose the
Yeah.
fine details and stuff. And so, I mean, obviously, again, for the sake of narrative in this story, it's more pronounced. But that's, yeah, I think at a certain level, we all have that reality as we get
Yeah.
older.
No, there's definitely something here in that script. But there's a corporate entity as well, right? Where
Yeah.
like
Yeah, because yeah, and of course, what makes this story interesting from a corporate standpoint is this: there's more to it than just corporate greed, so to speak. That's the stereotypical motivation, obviously, for their interest. But they created this in this story. The CEO of the company, who was the one who developed this implant originally, ironically didn't trust technology to record his how he created it, and because of his Alzheimer's, he's found himself unable to replicate the,
Yeah.
uh, the device. And so that again brings even more urgency on his part because, quite frankly, he doesn't have the ability to replicate it at this point, and he's losing his own mind through a very recognizable disease that affects many people.
Yeah. And yeah, that's another thing too, right? About like the people just who have that disease just lose everything, lose their whole like everything. Their memory is who we are, I guess, right? So
And that's very true. And again, that's kind of the story because ultimately, as Adley potentially loses her own memories, she risks potentially, perhaps even eventually, losing her own identity, or she risks that potential situation down the road, depending on how her own use of this technology impacts her ability to have those memories that form the basis
so
of who she is.
so do you remember where you were when you kind of came up with this idea? When you had this idea in your head?
um, I was talking one of my children. I have two adult children, and we were talking about things about memories and things I couldn't remember about my own childhood, and and of course having raised kids and seen the technology and all that, I kind of just started putting it together
Yeah.
during the course of that conversation that it would be an interesting story to kind of connect the the access to the information that we have available now and what the potential consequences could be under certain circumstances. So I just kind of put those two thought processes together and I thought it seemed like an interesting way for the story to progress.
So do you mind asking how old are your kids now?
Oh, they're both in their mid to late 20s now.
So
So
they entered the first generation of social media where like nobody was really paying attention to what they were doing and they had to learn it on themselves on their own, I guess, right?
it is. Yeah, they were probably. I think it's fair to say they represented probably the first generation that readily had this information available, like through cell phones
Yeah.
and
So if they were 26, for example, they would be like 10 years old in like 2010. So that's like right when it started getting going, I guess, right?
very true,
Yeah.
very true.
I know. I feel bad for that generation because it's like nobody was showing them anything. It was like it was all like because I was on it for work and it was like, oh my god, this is terrible. Like you saw the all the misinformation and all the propaganda and all the bullying and like the nastiness, right? So and it was
Yeah,
like Wild West. Well, it still is to a certain extent, but like nobody was paying attention to it at all, right? So
that's very true. And so and so in the context of this story, I mean,
yeah,
basically you have, and again, the whole what makes I think hopefully will make the story relatable to a lot of people is you have a at the end of the day, you have all these issues going on in the situation involving a 14-year-old girl who's basically what I've tried to do capture in the pilot, hopefully if there was ever a series, would be to basically this is in the context of a 14-year-old girl trying to navigate her way through a new
yeah,
high school, and and all the challenges that go with just being a teenager. And so it's kind of it's taken that point in children's lives and throwing in this monkey this wrench that is
yeah.
just thrown everything out of taking it to a whole different level.
So what do your kids think about you writing screenplays?
Oh, I think they're somewhat amazed by the old man. But I mean, I've been writing not in the context of screenplays, but I've been writing for most of my career in my day job. So um, this is just a different way.
What's your day job?
Oh, I'm an attorney, so
So
I've
many
been writing.
attorneys, so
Huh?
many attorneys becoming writers. It's amazing.
Well, it for me, it's fun because it's a different type of writing, and
Yeah,
it's like we're using a new, using a new muscle or whatever when you're trying to. It's something different, and
Yeah.
I truly enjoy it.
So you're like, so what kind of lawyer are you?
I'm a criminal prosecutor, so I work. So I represent the state of Michigan
Oh
in
wow.
cases. So that's what I do for my day job.
So you got some stories to tell then.
Yeah, I have stories, but I mean, ironically, I don't know if right at this point in my life, I don't know if my day job, even though there are interesting stories, would be something I would find entertaining to be doing as a
Yeah.
screenwriter. I mean, I think
So
indirectly may have some impact, but
are you
I,
like you live in like the Detroit area or?
no, I'm actually up in the Tri-City area. I'm actually a prosecutor in Saginaw, which is it's a city with a lot of uh, criminal elements going on. So unfortunately it's a city that has a lot of crime issues. But
So, yeah. So I guess your job is safe, I guess. But not
unfortunately,
to be overly
unfortunately
funny.
that seems to be the case.
Oh man. Okay, so then what got you? When did you decide to become a screenwriter? When did you decide to write scripts?
I just decided. I mean, I've always kind of toyed with the idea of doing something, but like a lot of people, I didn't really know about what it would take,
Yeah.
and I stumbled upon a program that helped with formatting, for screenwriting, and I just started tinkering with it one day. I said, well, this might be fun, and by using that program to help me learn how to format properly and all that, it helped me put my thoughts in a format that would obviously meet industry standards and all that. So
Yeah.
I guess that was probably the final thing that I always had that interest. I just didn't really know how to go about it. And then I just kind of learned as I went along. And I started like last summer. I had some time and I was just decided I'd start writing. That's when I wrote the other screenplay. That was actually my first one.
This is relatively new for you then.
Yeah, this one here, The Memory Tax, is my most recent screenplay.
Yeah.
The one I started with first was The Holmes Enigma, and I have one other in between the two.
But this is all like all new stuff. This is all a whole new world for you.
It is, and it's been fun, and it is fun, and I
Wow.
still am enjoying it, and it gives me something to do, especially during the winter months up here in Michigan. There's not, I'm not the type of guy who goes out and does a lot in the winter
Yeah.
time.
Well,
So,
I'm from Niagara Falls, Buffalo area, and
ah,
so I went to my dad worked at GM of all places, so I went to Detroit a lot as a kid. So I went like Michigan. So I basically I'm fond of the city. I'm fond of the state. So yeah. So it gets cold there.
it does, it does,
Colder
yeah,
than Toronto, probably because of the lake, right? So
yeah. Well, the Great Lakes have a huge impact on our weather here.
yeah.
Yes, I mean it creates weather and it stops weather. I mean it's a Lake Michigan in particular has a really significant impact on our weather patterns in the lower peninsula.
Is there a boat or a bridge that gets you across to Illinois or no? I'm just curious.
Oh, as far as boats going across, we have one that goes across to Wisconsin. It's like
Okay, that's sort of what I meant. Yeah.
yeah, the Badger. I think it's called. It's a coal. It's still. I think it's a coal-driven ship. Still, it's a
It's like a
car
ferry
ferry.
boat. You can put your cars on there.
Yep, yep, yes, it's a car ferry.
Yeah,
So
I think I should do that one time because it's like
I think, yeah, they keep talking about the fact that it may or may not, the government may eventually stop its use because of pollution concerns. Because of
oh,
course it's still coal-driven.
I thought you were going to say they're going to build a bridge finally. That's not going to happen.
No, no, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, because it would save a lot of people's time and energy, right? So
Oh yeah. Well, getting to Wisconsin from Michigan, there's no direct route, obviously.
no,
You
you have
either
to
have
go
to
around the loop. You have to go around the penis, right? The Lake Michigan.
Yep.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
Okay. So then let's talk about the Holmes Enigmas, which is like you said before, it's more of a crime
Yep.
mystery. We're kind of up your alley, I guess, right? I'm sure
Well,
you must have met many of detectives and like for cases and jury and in courts. Like I'm sure you've met many police officers in your day.
that is very true. I deal with them,
Yeah.
yes, quite a bit. And I mean, indirectly, I suppose I can't, I won't. pretend that these characters reflect any officers I've known because
Sure.
they're very unique and different. But yes, the Holmes Enigma is my first one I wrote, and that one there is it's a modern day story. Um, the character of Sherlock Holmes is there's a character that goes by that name, but obviously it's explained throughout the series that this story does not pretend that it's the Sherlock Holmes of literature. It's a
Yeah.
individual who suffered a very personal loss, who has chosen to use that alias, so to speak, in his pursuit of trying to find justice in the world. I mean, he's a very damaged individual. But he's also very smart, very intellectual. So he's obviously of the vein of Sherlock Holmes in that regard. But yeah, basically, the story starts with a homicide involving a 28-year-old woman who is a daughter of one of the officers at the precinct. As the story develops, it becomes clear that there's a number of daughters who all were killed at that age group.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sherlock offers his services. The two other main characters is Lieutenant Callahan and his daughter, who's a recently um, uh, promoted detective, Amanda Callahan. And basically, he offers his services. Obviously, they're very skeptical about having a third party coming in and investigating. But he can see that there's institutional involvement here in these homicides. And as the story develops, it becomes very clear that not only is there institutional involvement in these homicides, but it goes to the very top of the precinct. And from a story arc standpoint, that is the most immediate story. But what develops throughout the story is that there's also additional issues that exist in this precinct where there's corruption and
So it's a conspiracy script, and there's a lot
yes,
of right?
yeah. There's the rot within the precinct goes very deep, and that as the series again that the pilot emphasizes that as it works its way through, with the idea being that this is and quite frankly, Holmes is there to try to get to the bottom of it all, so to speak. And if a series was developed, that would be the natural progression would be for them to search that out. But of course, one of the things I think that the script emphasizes to its story is that both the problem that the detective and her father, the lieutenant, has is that they're so ingrained within this institution, and that it's hard for them not to put blinders up and not see some of the more obvious problems because they're so into the moment. This is like their extended family.
They're in the weeds.
Yes.
But is there a lot of family kind of connection from your experience in the police force? Like a lot of different the next generation of cops coming in?
There is some, yes. I mean, I think it's I don't there's some. I think there's some people that follow in their parents' pursuit. But it's become in this day and age, though, because of the changes in how law enforcement officers are treated. I mean, I think there's a lot of effort, a lot of desire by the younger generation, maybe not necessarily follow their parents' footsteps because it's become a very difficult occupation to be in.
Oh, really?
Both financially and because of all the heightened scrutiny. I think there's a lot of it's become a very tough profession, and at least in our area. But we have officers out there, but I think they're getting younger, and I think that a lot of the older officers are just as soon as they're able to leave, I think they are, because it's just again the world it's getting tougher. Well, we see it in the news.
Well, they're on camera all the time now, right? Because everybody's got phones, so.
Everyone's second
15, 20 years ago, right? On camera, so that's probably a good thing. But
it's a good thing, but it's also you have people second guessing, so not only are there legitimate concerns being discovered, but there's also people second guessing judgment calls that
like in the moment calls, But if you go on like ride-alongs or whatever, most of it is just them mediating, right? Like most of them just so there's a certain psychological element to the job that you kind of think that they should have, right? Kind of a skill set, I guess, right?
You would think, yes, you have to. You have to be able
Yeah,
to mediate. And I think sometimes in this day and age, I don't think they necessarily always provide as much training in that area as they
yeah,
probably should,
yeah,
because it's a huge part of their jobs. I mean, they're being called upon to deal with very stressful situations among domestic violence is being the most obvious example. There's a
sure,
lot of that going on,
yeah,
and they're being brought in to have to mediate these situations in a very difficult situation. So absolutely, and again, um, while and that's why from a prosecutor standpoint, even though we may touch upon those types of things in this story, um, it is there's law the whole issue the whole issue of law enforcement. There's so much information out there, so much sources of ideas that can be done with it because it's such a well,
there's
it's
so
a
many
very
TV
complex.
shows and like books about law enforcement and like in courtrooms. Like, what is like from your experience? Like, is there any realistic television show or like movie about what you do for a living?
I'm very harsh with and I'm very tough when it comes to watching
Yeah,
shows about legal profession because I in order I mean it's the short answer is I've been very hard on watching very critical on watching law enforcement type shows or the
yeah,
legal profession in general because I just don't. There's some that do better than others, but I find myself analyzing it well, as I'm watching it. So the only time, I mean, the only show I could say that I found about because it was so absurd was I did find Boston Legal amusing when that was on the air.
okay.
Yeah, but it was because it wasn't taking itself too seriously, and that's the reason
Gotcha.
why. I mean,
David E. Kelly, right? Lawyer.
yeah.
He wrote a lot of like he wrote a lot of books. Like I did you ever see Goliath? I really like Goliath a lot.
Oh, I have not. No, I have not seen that one. No,
Yeah, it was Billy
I mean,
Bob Thornton. Like yeah, and he's like a lawyer, kind of burned out lawyer.
yeah, I mean, but yeah, there's another one another movie that was out there a number of years ago that I thought was interesting. Again, I still had some issues with it, but it was the Rainmaker. Or was it the Rainmaker?
The
And
Black Demon. It's a
yeah,
John
yes,
Grisham book, right? Another
yeah,
lawyer.
yes,
The
it was
lawyer.
John. Yes, it was, and that was an interesting. It
Yeah,
was only because I've dealt with insurance company before I was a prosecutor. I did civil
yeah.
litigation for a number of years, and I
Yeah.
dealt with the dark side of insurance.
And they
Um,
just he wins like spoiler alert, I apologize, but it's a book and it's 30 years old, but he wins the case, but then they just go bankrupt. They don't pay
yep,
anybody because they decide to go bankrupt, which happens all the time, right? In these
yep, and that one that was a one I was able to watch all the way through and say, it was done well enough that I mean, so there have been a few movies or TV shows that I've been able
yeah,
to.
maybe you gotta make one. But I think what happens is that tell me if I'm wrong, is
Yeah.
that you're working on probably like more than one case, right?
Yes.
So in these movies, it's like I'm just working on this one case, and
That,
I'm
yeah. That,
doing my
that, that,
walking
that,
kind of montage and preparing for it, right? So it's like,
yeah. That's you might. I mean, the only time where you could maybe say. I mean, 99% of the time you're juggling multiple projects at the same
yeah,
time. I mean, yes. I guess if you're within a couple of days of a trial, yes, your focus is going to be on that trial. But even then, you might still have some other stuff you have to deal with. But
yeah,
the typical whether you're in criminal cases or civil cases, your day is going to be juggling multiple projects
yeah,
because every judge thinks their case is most important, and every client thinks their case is most important,
sure,
and therefore you have to juggle it to keep everyone satisfied with,
yeah.
with how things are
But
progressing.
how many get plea bargain? How many cases get plea bargain? Most of them do.
I mean, there's a good chunk of them. Yeah, I mean, I mean, I think I would say, yeah. I would say the vast majority of cases will resolve through some sort of a plea agreement because Normally, because again, once we bring a case, we feel confident that the evidence supports our position, and once the defense attorney has seen what we have
Yeah,
and the defendant has been advised,
yeah,
then it's just a matter of doing damage control and trying to get a result that that seems fair under the circumstances and that will resolve. Because if we were to try every single case that we have at any given time, we wouldn't have enough lawyers, enough hours in a day to do so, because
yeah.
there'd be so
Well,
much.
yeah, that's
So
unfortunate.
you have to make, and you so you have to try to try to reach reasonable outcomes that address societal needs, as well as something that hopefully the defendant can accept,
Yeah,
because of course it takes two parties to reach an agreement on anything. So
yeah. So Better Call Saul. You see that one? That show?
I have caught. I've not been able to get into it, but I it's a I know, and I know that's a popular one. And
No,
again,
I just thought that that's an interesting take on the law, right? Like,
yep, yeah, I would agree. It's definitely a unique take. That's for sure.
yeah, no, but like about how his origin story, like how he's doing these cases, and like he's got to start at the bottom and build himself up, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
then of course he comes corrupt, right? So, but
Yeah. Well, that's what makes television interesting, and
yeah,
that's why I said at the beginning. And with like when I'm writing this series right here, but I wrote this pilot. I mean, I tried to. Yes, there's certain things about how law enforcement conducts itself that I know from basically from reading incident reports. I know how I've having spoken to law enforcement officers. I know
yeah,
basic operating things that they do. Um, but I tried not to get too stuck into the procedure aspect of it, because, quite frankly, I think that in the end, people, I mean, it's the care. Well, and that's true of both series. When I write a story, what I find the most
yeah,
interesting is the character development. The setting is important, obviously, depending on the
yeah,
genre, which story I'm writing. But in the end, for me, whether it's the Holmes Enigma or the Memory Tax, or my other one, at the end of the day, to me, I'm character driven. I think that's what I find
yeah,
personally interesting when I watch a show or a movie, for that matter.
yeah, 100%, 100%. One last thing, The Wire. Did you see The Wire?
No, I have no.
Oh, you
My
have?
wife, my
Yeah,
wife has suggested more than once that we
yeah.
should, we
No,
should.
I'm curious what your perspective, because you're in the weeds of that kind of world, right? So
Yeah,
it's a basically like the corrupt system of like our society, I guess, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
how
I mean,
it's broken and it can't be fixed.
yeah. Now I will say that, again, I mean, it would be kind of. I mean, obviously, the Holmes Enigma deals with a corrupt precinct,
Yeah,
so I mean, I've
sure.
obviously
Yeah,
embraced it for purposes of narrative story in
yeah,
my pilot. But from a personal standpoint, I do feel um, that I have, in order to function in this type of profession, you have to have faith in the system. And even though you have to understand it's, of course, it's an imperfect system, everything is imperfect to some
yeah,
extent. But I, I'm more of an optimist in the context of my dealing with my day to day life as a prosecutor than I am perhaps as a writer. But then again, that's what makes it, I guess, stories interesting,
that's interesting.
is the skepticism about how our system is working or not working, as the case may be.
Yeah.
So
Well, great. They're both great scripts. You're getting it out there, and like I said, it's just a whole new world for you. And like you're and it seems like TV's your way to go. It's where you want to focus on, I guess, right?
yeah, that's been kind of my focus. When I started writing this, I didn't know at first where I was going to go, whether it was going to be looking at writing like movie scripts. I just the type of stories never really changed as far as what I was interested in. But as I started writing, I think I just started thinking the television screenplay is just, I think, I just found the style. I found the structure of it more interesting, because it allowed me to develop various storylines and develop it multi-layered, and I could build upon, I could resolve some, and I could keep some, I
Mm,
liked that flexibility, so I could develop a world, and with the idea that hopefully one day I could further develop it in future stories as well. So rather than a one and done type of situation.
gotcha. Well, good on you, man. It's you're like it's amazing what you're doing, and I'm sure you're very busy as well. So you're giving yourself time to do all this, right? And you've raised two kids, and
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming they're off in the world doing their own thing, and
They're doing their own thing, and
yeah,
that's why maybe that's another reason why it took me this long. Now I have this. Now I have some extra time on my hands
yeah,
to take on
yeah.
this.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Is your wife writing novels? Then you're doing screenwriting.
No, she's just bewildered by what I'm doing, saying, "Oh,
That's great.
don't you write enough already?" She says, and I say, "Well, yeah, but this is different, and
That's great.
I enjoy it." But
Well, get into the wire. I want like I'm curious what you would think of that. If your wife, yeah, if wife wants you to watch
I
it.
know, I know, Ben. I probably should.
It's
I
like
mean,
20 years old, but it's still like relevant to today's world, right? So they
yeah,
kind of focus on the different stages of like the government, like the school system and how that works. Of course, the police system, and then like the mayor's office, and like how everything's kind of you know not working properly, right? So
yeah. I mean, that's certainly a very relevant conversation to have in this day and age too, because we're
yeah, yeah,
still that seems to be something that pops up in our news quite a bit lately.
yeah. That's what I'm saying,
Dysfunction,
right? Like
well, dysfunction in government.
it's like this bubble that might burst someday, right? So yeah, I know it's a rich country, right? But like I think we're at 100 years coming up 2029 1929, right? So because like I'm sorry, this is my like time conspiracy where like they had the virus in 1920, then we had a virus in 2020, we had the crash in 1929. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying it's like we're kind of repeating ourselves, right?
I mean, the argument has been made that if you don't pay attention to history, history will repeat
That's what
itself.
I'm saying, right?
And yeah,
So
and and I think that's what I mean. Now that's a different topic altogether. But I think history, as a society, and I'm a person who likes history and appreciates history, and that was my undergraduate degree.
yeah,
Undergraduate I was in college, as that, I mean, if we don't oftentimes give the history the attention it should, because it explains why things have happened in the past, and it also helps give us guidance to moving forward, but we oftentimes ignore
well in the 20s, right? The roaring 20s,
it. Yep.
it was there was an inflated market after the virus was figured out.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
seems to be the same thing happening now, right? So
You could definitely make those arguments, and I
yeah.
think that I think they're very legitimate. I mean,
But I'm sure the economists can debunk that and get into the weeds and say you're wrong, right? I'm just talking about
well,
yeah.
Well, the thing is the problem with any expert is that, yeah, you can render an opinion, but only time will tell who's right
Yeah.
and who's wrong.
Yeah.
And and again, I would rather, if I'm making a decision today, I'd rather be looking back in the past to give me an understanding of what is the right course of action, rather than just walking around in the dark trying to sort your way through life, because history is a very important tool,
Yeah.
and we
All
should
right, man.
use it.
Congratulations on the success of the scripts. Keep writing, and let's talk again when we showcase another script of yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with
Thank
me.
you. Go Michigan.
Thank you.